Hello YouTube, and welcome back to Creatures, Caverns, and Crafting. Today we're going to talk about the bane of all dungeon explorers, and that is the dreaded chest mimic. I like to think of this creature akin to a shellfish, where it finds an abandoned chest or barrel and takes residence inside of it, just waiting for that greedy adventurer. However, I am aware that in some lore, the creature and the chest or barrel are just one and the same. That's just kind of my preference. That's like what I like to use, and what we're going to do is we're going to use a 3D model provided by the Black Scrolls Dungeon Chest 3D miniature set. And you can find this at Drive-Thru RPG. It's very cheap. It's a great way to use leftover PLA. If you're like me, I have a ton of this stuff laying around, and it's just easy to print off. Just one of these chests normally takes about an hour. In this screenshot, you can see I have about 5. That's going to take maybe about 4 hours. Let's go ahead and load it up, and we'll go ahead and start printing it. So now that we're done printing the file, this is the bottom portion of the treasure chest, and here's the top. Came out pretty clean. There may be some supports, nothing very hard to clean up. Here's the mimic itself. The details on this are going to pop a little bit more when we paint it, but very good detail. I promise you, when we do the final product, you'll see. Here is a treasure chest with a cross on it. Now, one of the cool things about this is it is interactive. You can put the top on the bottom and open it up. And we can also take the mimic portion and put it inside, so there is some modularity with it. So you can kind of keep your adventurers guessing, are they going to get a treasure chest or are they going to get a mimic in there? So there we go. We just pop those in there. And I'm going to be using a dark burnt umber to paint this up today. This is going to be our base paint. Now you can use any dark brown. You can even use a leather brown that I have here, so it's really up to you. And there we go, grabbing the wrong paint. And I know this is going to be kind of cringe-worthy, but I am going to go straight from the bottle. This is an old bottle that I have. It's hard for me to get it out on the palette, and I've kind of watered it down a little bit. So I'm going to be breaking some painting rules, but it's just going to go down. You know, there's no real big technique to this. Just get it all over the chest itself. And once we get that painted up, we'll move on to our next step. And here we go, putting the final touches on the chest, and that's what it should look like. And all I've done is just based it out. Moving on to the mimic portion of the model, I've got my palette here, and I've already put a drop of pink crafter's paint. You can use any paint that you have on hand. I just happen to have this by Apple Barrel. I also have a red airbrush paint, and again, this is just what I had on hand. You're more than welcome to use any red that you might have, but I'm going to start blending the two together, and this is going to just act kind of as my primer for the model. And I'm just going to load the brush up and continue to increase the volume of the paint. And we're going to pick up the model, get a little bit more on the brush, and then we're going to start applying. Now we want to take care to get this in all the deep recesses of the model. The camera doesn't really show this very well because of the black PLA, but the model is kind of deep, especially inside of the mouth itself. We're just going to put that in there and apply it generously. And then what we'll also do is we'll allow this to dry once we're done and apply a second coat. So here we have the mimic after the 2 coats of pink primer have dried. We're going to move on to the red that we used previously. And all I'm going to do is load up my brush and start applying this to the tongue. And we're going to take care to make sure that we get to the back portion of the model itself. And here in a second, you're going to see me start applying this to the edges of the model and to the sides of it as well. And what I like to do is I kind of think of this as the muscles or the tendons that have attached themselves to the treasure chest. And then also it just gives it a little bit more detail, a little bit more depth to the model. And there we go. Moving along very fast, we're going to go ahead and apply a wash. I'm using this Reichland Flesh Shade by Citadel Paints. If you have a red or a brown wash that you've already created, you can use that as well. And once we've allowed it to dry, we're going to start our dry brushing steps. I'm taking this Apple Barrel Pink and I'm just going to rub it off onto this napkin, getting all the paint that I can off of the brush. And then I'm going to start to apply this to the model. Notice I'm only focusing on the raised areas of the gum. I'm going to stay away from the inside of the mouth. I'm not going to put any paint on the tongue itself. And once we've given that a good dry brushing, we're going to allow it to dry and we'll move on to our next step. So we're going to take this yellow and white craft paint and put just a drop on our palette, like so, and go ahead and begin to mix the two colors together. You can use a drop of water to make the blending easier. I'm actually going to apply a little bit more white just to lighten the color up a little bit more. And I'm going to use a fine tip brush for applying this to the model. And as you can see, I'm just going to take my time, short and easy strokes. I'm taking care not to get this on the gum. And what we'll also do is add a little white to the tip just to give it a little bit more detail and depth. There we go. So I'm going to take this Art Coat Technical Paint by Citadel. And as you can see, I've finished the teeth up. I've even added the white highlights we spoke about previously. We'll just go ahead and open the pot. I'm going to use a generic brush for this next step. Nothing fancy, just something with a soft bristle. And I'm going to go ahead and start dabbing the Art Coat onto the model. This is a great paint. It's going to leave a wet, glossy look. And we're going to make sure that before we do this that the model is nice and dry. The last thing we want to do is rehydrate that paint. If you do that, you could get a blending of colors. Just make sure we get it in the recesses, all along the teeth and the gums. And there we go. Already looking great. Really quick, I used a antique copper for the locks and the edges of the chest. You can use any metallic paint that you like. Just going to add a nice little detail. Just make sure we get the sides and that lock area. So we finished applying the antique copper to the chest. We're going to move on to a wash. I have a Black Magic Craft wash here, but you can use a Nuln Oil, or if you have your own black wash, you can use that as well. After our wash has dried, it's now time for the dry brushing, and I'm going to use a Territorial Beige by Apple Barrel. You can use a lighter tan that you have on hand, doesn't really matter. I'm kind of using a stiffer bristle brush for this. I'm just wiping the excess paint off on this napkin. And then I'm just going to start applying it to the wood portions of the chest here. Just making sure that we just make the details pop. And I may be going a little heavier than I should, but this is all going to tie in really nice whenever we go to apply the matte finish. Make sure that we're getting in all those corners. You don't have to get every single area. Again, this is just to make details pop. There, quick and simple. I'll be using the AK Interactive Ultra Varnish Matte for the last step of our project. I'm going to apply some of this to the palette. And you can also use a tester's dull coat if you don't have this type of matte varnish. We're just looking for a sealer, maybe to calm down that highlight we just did with the dry brushing. I'm just going to apply the varnish all over the chest. And I'm just using that same soft bristle brush I had before. A good word of advice on this is once you've applied the varnish, maybe crack that chest top and bottom half open. Once the varnish dries, it can stick together, make it a little bit difficult for you to get it open. Just add a little bit here to the back. And once we're done with that, we'll let it dry and we'll be finished. And let's check it out on the table. I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, please like, subscribe, and follow. I'm very new, and I hope to provide lots of content in the future. Thank you, and have a great and wonderful night and day wherever you are.